Al Capone, Rise and Fall of the King of Evil. It was the Roaring '20s, a time of jazz, excess, and crime. In the shadow of this era, one man rose from the depths of the underworld to claim the crown of Chicago's criminal empire. His name was Al Capone. But his rise wasn't just a tale of ambition. It was one soaked in blood, treachery, and the relentless pursuit of power. Born in 1899 in Brooklyn, New York, Alphonse Gabriel Capone's life was forged in hardship. The son of Italian immigrants, Al learned early on that the world was a place where strength, not kindness, carved out a man's path. A boy with nothing, destined to become the most feared man in America. As a teenager, he joined the notorious 5 Points gang. But it wasn't enough to survive. No, it was about control, power. He knew it, and soon, the streets of New York whispered his name. It was 1920 when Prohibition came into play. The government outlawed alcohol, but the people, they still wanted to drink. And so, a void was created, and Capone, an opportunist if there ever was one, filled it with an iron fist. His rise in Chicago was swift, brutal, and unstoppable. Capone's network of bootleggers, gamblers, and hitmen grew as fast as the bloodshed that followed him. Chicago, a city of glimmering lights and hollow promises, became a battleground. Murder was routine. The streets were painted red, with a cold, calculated smile on Capone's face every step of the way. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, February 14, 1929. 7 members of the Moran Gang, rivals to Capone, were gunned down in cold blood in a warehouse. 4 men walked in, dressed as policemen, and mowed down the opposition with Tommy guns. A massacre that would haunt Chicago forever. Capone's empire was now untouchable, or so he thought. But beneath the surface, the law was closing in. The government, unable to arrest him for his crimes, turned to a more insidious weapon: taxes. The man who had slipped through the cracks of the law for years would eventually fall to the most unlikely of foes: the Internal Revenue Service. The agent who pursued him, Elliot Ness, and his untouchables were relentless. Capone, who once controlled the streets, was now fighting to keep his empire intact. It wasn't a war of bullets anymore. It was a war of wits. But Capone was losing. Losing to the law, to the very system he had once so expertly bent to his will. In 1931, Al Capone was finally convicted, not for the murders or the violence that defined his reign, but for tax evasion. It was a blow that shattered his empire, and the once indomitable kingpin was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. But the story didn't end there. No, Capone's downfall. It wasn't just the law that brought him down. It was the very thing that had made him powerful. The violence, the corruption, the greed. It had eaten him alive. Capone was not just a criminal. He was a man who had played a deadly game and had lost. By the time he was released, his health had deteriorated. Syphilis, the disease that he had long ignored, ravaged his mind and body. The mighty king of crime, reduced to a shadow of the man he once was, a criminal mastermind, now forgotten by the city that had once feared him. Al Capone passed away on January 25, 1947, in Miami, far from the streets of Chicago that had been his kingdom. And though his reign of terror ended, the name Capone would live on in the whispered legends of the criminal world. Al Capone's story is a reminder: power is fleeting. Crime may seem like the easiest way to the top, but it's a path that will always lead to the fall.